The plot thickens. NPR CEO Katherine Maher is headed in front of Congress. Yeah, I'll take you through the story. It's gonna be a good one. So if you're listening to this on podcast, you might want to turn on the video because I have it with me. So what we have is this letter here, as you can see on the screen, from the 118th Congress and the Energy and Commerce Committee. It's a letter to Katherine Maher, and what we have here is essentially the committee writing to NPR's chief executive about the Uri Berliner article, one that we went through extensively on the last episode of Media Studies. I'll link to it in the bio, but we can also, but we'll take you through the broad steps here. There's lots of shots in this letter, and none more bigger than this top one in the top first paragraph of this. As a taxpayer-funded public radio organization, NPR should focus on fair and objective news reporting that considers and reflects the views of the larger U.S. population and not just a niche audience. That's a shot. And then it goes into the Uri Berliner story. On April 9th, 2024, former NPR senior business editor Uri Berliner wrote an article published in the Free Press that raised concerns about the absence of, quote, viewpoint diversity at the organization. As the nation's leading public radio network, really the only one. Pacifica exists, but it's not really much of a competition. But okay, with a weekly audience of 42 million listeners, it is unsettling that, quote, an open-minded spirit no longer exists within NPR. That the news station is promoting strident left-wing views to the exclusion of alternative viewpoints, according to Berliner, who worked at NPR for 25 years. He says it's reflected in the voter registration at NPR. Concerned by the lack of viewpoint diversity, I look at the voter registration for our newsroom. In D.C., where NPR is headquartered and many of us live, I found that 87 registered Democrats were working in editorial positions and 0 Republicans. No doubt it's Republicans that are calling this CEO of NPR to Congress. We'll go on further. It picks out word by word parts of the Berliner argument. No doubt Barry Rice is somewhere just thrilled that the Free Press has actually caused action in the real world, pointing to the NPR siding with Adam Schiff and having Schiff on over and over again, 25 times about Trump in Russia. Many of those conversations, Schiff alluded to the purported evidence of collusion, which did not come out. It has never been proven, but this is something that was widely believed and widely reported, and also walked back quietly in recent years. Schiff's talking points became the drumbeat of NPR news reports, but when the Mueller report found no credible evidence of collusion, NPR's coverage was notably sparse. Russiagate quietly faded from our programming, Berliner wrote. Similarly, on the Hunter Biden laptop, which even Hunter Biden admits actually existed. He literally sued the guy who had the laptop about the laptop. If it didn't exist and there was no issue there, and he didn't, and he was cool with it, whatever was on it being public, why would he sue the guy who turned this over to the government and the media? Just a side point. With the election only weeks away, NPR turned a blind eye to the Hunter Biden laptop story. They weren't alone. A lot of places did, and a lot of places hastily debunked it. We don't want to waste our time on stories that are not really stories, and we don't want to waste our listeners and our readers' time on stories that are just pure distraction. Once again, the laptop existed. Hunter Biden admits that it exists, and as did the U.S. government. at this point. But this is hindsight. It was new. It's a you could argue that there is some excuse there because, people do make mistakes. But I felt at the time that this was hasty, and currently, in hindsight, it looks horrible. Also, it points to the focus as quote, I listen as one of NPR's best and most fair-minded journalists said it wasn't as good as said we weren't following up on the laptop story because it could help Trump. And I don't think that was just NPR. I think that was a lot of people who thought that way in the news media, that certain things they just weren't going to places they weren't going to go because they felt that, hey, this might help Donald Trump, and we don't want to help Donald Trump. And and it is clear that that feeling happens even to this day. Quote Berliner, we could have fessed up about our misjudgment, but like Russia collusion, we didn't make the hard choice of transparency. Even after the Washington Post admitted that, you know, the laptop existed. Yeah. Also, the origins of COVID-19 were brought up as well. But probably in the most spicy element of this, from my perspective, was they dug up the TED Talk that Ms. Maher participated in prior to joining NPR. I think this was just sort of mind numbing, this quote, but I'll walk you through it. In August 2021, at your TED Talk, What Wikipedia Teaches Us About Balancing Truth in Beliefs, you introduced the concept of minimum viable truth and praised Wikipedia's approach to truth, stating, but the people who write these articles, they're not focused on truth. They're focused on something else, which is the best of what we know right now. Well, duh. And after 7 years of working with these brilliant folks, I've come to believe that they are onto something. That perhaps for our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth might not be the right place to start. In fact, our reverence to the truth may be a distraction that's getting away and finding common ground and getting things done. That's alarming. That's kind of horrifying to hear someone in charge of one of the largest, definitely the largest radio news entity in America, let alone one of the largest media companies in America, uh, come to that conclusion. And so, in the spirit of that, I'm certain that the truth exists for you and probably for the person sitting next to you, but it might not be the same truth. This is because the truth of the matter is very often, for many people, happens to merge with the facts of the world and our beliefs. Now, this is the funny thing about this for me. This sounds a hell of a lot like the alternative facts line from early on in the Trump land. I'll pull up the video because I find that interesting. Let me dial it up real quick. Kellyanne Conway said that. Think it was within a month of Donald Trump being elected president. We'll walk through it and then we'll go back there. This is Kellyanne Conway and Chuck Todd on Meet the Press. It's one of the my favorite media moments of the last few years.
Answer the question. Why did the president send out his press secretary, who's not just the spokesperson for Donald Trump? He also serves as the spokesperson for all of America at times. He speaks for all of the country at times. Why put him out there for the very first time in front of that podium to utter a provable falsehood? It's a small thing, but the first time he confronts the public, it's a falsehood?
Chuck, I mean, if we're going to keep referring to our press secretary in those types of terms, I think that we're going to have to rethink our relationship here. I want to have a great open relationship with our press. But look what happened the day before, talking about falsehoods. We allowed the press to come into the Oval Office and witness President Trump signing executive orders. And of course, the Senate had just confirmed General Mattis and General Kelly to their 2 posts. And we allow the press in. And what happens almost immediately? A falsehood is told about removing the bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office. That's just flat out false. And
it was corrected immediately.
Chuck, why was it said? Chuck, why was it said in the first place? Because everybody is so presumptively negative.
Climb into the head of that reporter.
No, that it's okay. No, excuse me. Oh, no. That reporter was writing on behalf of the press pool. That falsehood got spread 3,000 times before it was corrected.
Excuse me. It does not excuse, and you did not answer the question.
I did answer your question.
No, you did not. You did not answer the question of why the president asked the White House press secretary to come out in front of the podium for the first time and utter a falsehood. Why did he do that? It undermines the credibility of the entire White House press office on day one.
Don't be so overly dramatic about it, Chuck. You're saying it's a falsehood, and they're giving Sean Spicer, our press secretary, gave alternative facts to that. But the point remains.
Alternative facts? Alternative facts, 4 of the 5 facts he uttered. The one thing he got right was Zeke Miller. 4 of the 5 facts he uttered were just not true. Look, alternative facts are not facts. They're falsehoods.
Chuck, do you think it's a fact or not that millions of people have lost their plans, their health insurance, and their doctors under President Obama? Do you think it's a fact that everything we heard from these women yesterday happened on the watch of Barack Obama? He was president for 8 years. Donald Trump's been here for about 8 hours. Do you think it's a fact that millions of women, 16.1 million women, as I stand here before you today, are in poverty along with their kids? Do you think it's a fact that millions don't have health care? Do you think it's a fact that we spent billions of dollars on education in the last 8 years, only to have millions of kids still stuck in schools that fail them every single day? These are the facts that I want the press corps to cover. This is why I'm here at the White House.
I understand
to change
what I don't
awful
understand
numbers
is
like that.
That is not what yesterday was about. So you have not answered the question. You did not answer the question.
It's what this presidency is going to be about.
You sent the press secretary out there to utter a falsehood on the smallest, pettiest thing.
I don't think anybody can prove that. Look, I actually don't think that. Maybe this is me as a pollster, Chuck, and you know data well. I don't think you can prove those numbers one way or the other. There's no way to really quantify crowds. We all know that. You can laugh at me all you want, but I'm very glad.
I'm just
Chuck,
befuddled.
Well, but you are, and I think it's actually symbolic of the way we're treated by the press. The way that you just laughed at me is actually symbolic of the way, very representative of the way we're treated by the press. I'll just ignore it. I'm bigger than that. I'm a kind and gracious person.
NBC.
Okay, so what I took that as, and perhaps she had a different explanation here of the quote alternative facts, and I'll bring back the quote here, and we'll run through it once more. And so, in the spirit of that, I'm certain the truth exists for you, but probably for the person that the truth that exists for you and probably the person next to you, but that might not be the same truth. This is because the truth of the matter is very often for many people what happens when we merge facts about the world with our beliefs about the world. For me, those two ideas, the idea of alternative tracks, facts, those two ideas merge. The fact that, hey, it's the if two people are in an argument, one person sees it another way, another person sees it a different way, and the truth is somewhere in between. It's just flatly interesting for this being pointed out and being one of the reasons why Katherine Maher is coming in front of Congress. It speaks poorly on the decision making of these congressmen, but okay, fair. We'll keep going. So we all have different truths. They're based on things like where we come from, how we're raised, and how other people perceive us. Now, I think this could be nitpicky. I think it's very similar to the Kellyanne Conway idea of alternative facts, but I don't think she's entirely wrong here. I mean, I think there's definitely some truth to the idea that, hey, that your upbringing has a major effect on how you see the world and what you make of the world. Which, whether that should be involved with news, that's a different story. We'll keep going here. You are requested to appear before the Oversight and Investigation Subcommittee for a hearing on May 8th. I think I'll have to do a co-stream on that one. I think that's going to be quite interesting. To explain the allegations of political and ideological bias rampant at NPR. In addition, please provide the committee with the following information by no later than May 14th, 2024, my birthday. Yay. Now, question number one. In the past 5 years, how many registered Republicans, Democrats, Independents, and registered voters who are not required by state law to declare affiliation has NPR employed as part of its news media staff? Were there any internal written work, products, memoranda, emails, etc., excluding drafts created relating to the lack of political viewpoint diversity at NPR? If so, please produce copies to the subcommittee. In the last 5 years, what percentage of NPR's board of directors were registered Republicans? Oh my God, Mike, I think I think it's probably a big fat zero. That's my guess. Or I'll shoot him some bail. Probably in a single digits. In the last 5 years, what strategy, if any, did NPR implement to recruit individuals registered as Republicans or those who espouse non-left-leaning viewpoints, i.e. conservative or libertarian? I think that's also a goose egg, maybe single digits. I can't think of an NPR. I really can't think of a piece of NPR programming where there is a consistent conservative message or messenger. At least when you look at, let's say, MSNBC. Joe Scarborough, at least in name only, is a conservative. They bring on Michael Steele. He was head of the Republican Party at one point. They've had I forget the punching bag that they brought in regularly off the top of my head, but there were actually people on staff who claim to be conservative and claim to be a Republican. And if you look at Fox News, I mean, they employed Geraldo Rivera for a long time. They employed Juan Williams for a long time. There were people on staff, not a ton, but some, who come from the left, and they even would make fun of it. Outnumbered. Yes, it was one man and a bunch of women usually, but that one man, usually Geraldo or Juan Williams, it was usually a Democrat. I can't think of one piece of programming on NPR that fits that. Not one. Maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, if you can point me toward that program with a link, please put it in the comments. I'd love to see it. I can't think of one. And it's not to say that there haven't been conservatives on NPR. Here or there, you will hear from someone from the right on NPR programming. No doubt, there's an interview. Look, I've worked for the NPR affiliate. I've interviewed Republicans, and they aired it on there. But when we talk about the mothership, and we're talking national NPR programming, a piece of media entity that regularly does segments on things like thin privilege, you're not going to hear from anyone from the right, anyone from libertarian land, even, not at all. That viewpoint isn't going to be there. Or I'll be shocked. And I'm open to the idea. Please, if you have it, let me know. Honestly, I don't see much coming of this. Congressional hearings don't often move the needle. There's not a whole lot that come out of them. It's not impossible that something could happen, but I just would doubt it. But when you watch congressional hearings, as I do, because I'm a nerd, you hear lots of chest bumping, and I certainly will watch this one. This is going to be a gift. It's fantastic and fascinating, and I can't wait to watch it. But when it comes to substance, there's not a whole lot coming out of it. There will be some entertainment moments, for sure. Definitely some entertainment out of this. It's also reinforces my opinion about NPR, which, to clarify for anyone who don't quite get it, I'm fine with your editorial stance if you're honest about it and you're not taking government money. Be upfront about who you are, what you believe, and why you think you should run things that way, and don't take money from the government. I think that ideological foundations are the bedrock that all media is built on. You have a certain set of perspectives and point of view, and I think Maher's description of all that is not incorrect. Like, we all have biases. We all come from a certain perspective, and that perspective shapes what we put into the world as journalists and media creators. It certainly does, without a doubt. But if I am depending on government money in order to do that, and I am one-sided, and it's, as I said earlier, I'd be thrilled to be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. Then we have problems. So, what I would argue, what I would say, in order to avoid public floggings like this, would to be just stop it. Stop taking government money. It's not worth it. Pull back on it. You can do it incrementally. That's kind of what the BBC is doing in England. There was a TV subsidy that supported them, and they're pulling back on it, and so they're going independent, in part to to make sure they have an independent stance politically. And I think that this is something that NPR and PBS and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and, yes, local affiliates across the nation should do. You should pull back from this. Do it incrementally over a series of years. And then we can avoid